Thank you for listening to this PodcastOne Sportsnet production, available on Apple Podcasts and PodcastOne.
Whether you love the action in sports from the NHL and the NBA, or if you're looking to get in on the action for the biggest game of the NFL season happening this weekend, BetOnline.ag has got you covered. Create a free account on BetOnline.ag and receive a 50% sign-up bonus just by using the promo code PodcastOne. BetOnline.ag, your online sportsbook experts and exclusive partner of the PodcastOne Sportsnet.
The following program is a PodcastOne.com production.
He started in a small town in Texas. Worked his ass off to become one of the most famous wrestlers of all time.
We're going to take care of business tonight, and that's the bottom line.
And now he's dominating the world of on-demand audio. And he's doing it for the working man.
This is a damn good outlet for me to spew the bullshit off my brain.
Yeah! This is Steve Austin Unleashed.
All right, everybody, welcome to Steve Austin Show. I am currently out on vacation, recharging batteries, but just because I'm recharging the batteries, we still got business to take care of. In the meantime, we'll be playing some of the most requested Steve Austin Show classics that have been locked away in the archives. I got a great one for you this week, and here's my producer, Sean, to tell you all about it.
All right, thank you, Steve, and welcome to another classic edition of the Steve Austin Show. Producer Sean bringing you episodes... That's right, 2 episodes. Episodes 114 and 116, featuring former head of WCW and former WWE television personality, Eric Bischoff. He is going to be the guest on this classic edition of the Steve Austin Show. And as I said, episodes, because the Steve Austin Show aired Eric Bischoff in 4 separate parts. There were 3 parts that were just regular interview segments, and then there was a Q&A segment that Steve did with Eric. But the parts I'm doing are Unleashed episodes. So we're doing episodes 114 and 116 here today. Those aired respectively on May 8th, 2014 and May 15th, 2014. This is going to be a podcast amalgamation of those 2 episodes. So we're going to put together some of the greatest hits of those 2 episodes into one complete episode, and we're going to bring that to you today with Eric Bischoff, where he talks about taking over WCW and the TV operations in 1993, the genesis of the Monday Night Wars, also the subsequent turmoil in WCW that led to WCW dissolving and being bought by the WWE in 2001. Also, Eric's got some thoughts on Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Dusty Rhodes, stories from taping at the Disney theme park in the 90s, and a few funny stories at the end. Some good stuff featuring Randy Savage. So, a very WCW-centric episode here on the Steve Austin Show Classic that we're bringing to you today. This day in Steve Austin history, today being January 31st, at a 1997 Raw taping at the Sky Dome in Toronto. And now, mind you, it's a taping, so it aired a few days later, but the actual events that happened on this day happened on January 31st. Vader defeated Steve Austin by disqualification. And according to some of the research I did, this is notable for being the first 2-hour edition of Monday Night Raw, and it was known as the Royal Rumble Raw because they played a lot of clips from the 1997 Royal Rumble. And not Steve Austin related, but he's awesome, so I figured I would give this guy a shout out. But today is Fit Finley's birthday. Why don't you go ahead and wish Fit Finley a happy birthday. Go back, watch some Raw from 1997, and enjoy this episode of the Steve Austin Show, a classic episode of the Steve Austin Show with Eazy-E himself, Eric Bischoff.
All right, it's the final week of the NFL season. The biggest game of the year is just days away. It's the Rams versus Patriots in Atlanta, and it's this Sunday. Can Brady do it again? Will the city of Los Angeles bring home the Lombardi Trophy to the youngest coach in NFL? This is going to be a matchup for the ages. As I've been saying for months, there's only one place here at PodcastOne that has all the action you are looking for. BetOnline.ag. Sign up today for a free account on BetOnline.ag and use the promo code PodcastOne to receive a 50% sign-up bonus. If you have missed out before on jumping in on the NFL odds, well, you only have one game left, and it's the biggest game of the season. Don't sit on the sidelines anymore. Get in on the action. Visit betonline.ag today for all the details and use promo code PodcastOne. That's PodcastOne to get a 50% sign-up bonus and get yourself in on the action. BetOnline.ag, your online sportsbook experts.
This is Steve Austin Unleashed.
I'm sitting here with Eric Bischoff. We're drinking Buffalo Bill Cody beer, talking about how to make WCW being able to compete with WWF at the time and how you were able to get that job.
Yeah, I mean, it was a couple different things. It wasn't one vision, but it was, number one, we were perceived to be very Southern, very regional. We had to overcome that stigma. And that meant we had to change a number of things. Graphics, just the visual look of the show. It had to be a little slicker. Prior to that, Bill Watts was going to go the other way. Pull back the ring mats, go old school, make it look like a little TV
And we did pull those ring mats back.
And we
all
did.
All of a sudden, when you start falling on concrete and you talk about bullshit, I mean,
it was bad.
I'll say that because that's what it was, man. When you go crashing outside the ring, you need a little bit of padding to keep your ass safe. So none of the boys like that.
And the product suffered as a result of it.
It looked like hell.
It did. So my approach was, let's raise up the lights. Let's make the crowd a bigger part of the show. Let's make the announcers sound a little less Southern. Let's get away from the Southern style creative. Less gimmicks, less pokey stuff. No mummies, no hunchbacks.
But when you say Southern style, you think that was Southern style?
It was more so than what I was used to.
Or maybe regional.
Well, regional.
To your point, regional.
Regional.
Okay.
Yeah, more so than what I was used to growing up in Detroit and Minneapolis. So it was a combination of a lot of that. And, that put me in direct conflict with a lot of people that were from that market.
Had Shivani applied for this role?
I believe so. I knew the executive producer role we were talking about on Tuesday's show. There was a couple people internally, and there was also some people from New York that had outside of wrestling, television executive producer experience that had applied. And I think for whatever reason, someday interview Bill Shaw, he'll tell you, but they rolled the dice on me.
So then
everything changed. It changed a lot. Now, I didn't have complete control at that time. There was a guy by the name of Bob Dew who was in charge of wrestling operations. So he was in charge of the business side, syndication, international sales, home video, live events, which was a big issue. He was in charge of that side of the business. I was in charge of the television side of the business, which included talent, creative, what we saw, anything you saw on television, I was in charge of. And that worked for a period of time.
But you had to been in charge of, certainly with your experience in AWA, syndication sales, stick work, and coming to WCW, C-level announcer, by your own words, and all of a sudden you're in a spot where you're the guy, damn near the main guy. So you're in uncharted waters. Because sure, you got a great pitch. Now you got to execute this pitch. So, dude,
that was a little challenging.
Tell me about navigating those waters, because all of a sudden, I understand you're in charge of television, but there's a lot more to it than just saying, in charge of television and talent. Did you have to, first of all, you got the title, you got the job, you're the guy. Did you have to earn respect, or did the respect come as soon as you got that?
And Steve, you were part of it. You were there at that time. I knew, I was smart enough to know, I was still green in the business, relatively speaking.
Right.
People would act one way to your face,
right,
and they would be as polite or respectful as they needed to be at that moment to get through the day and to keep what they had. But I knew I had no respect, or very little, from very few of the talent, because in their minds, I've been in the ring, wasn't a wrestling guy, was a pretty boy announcer, just got thrust into the job. So I knew I was in for a world of crap.
But just as far as the day-to-day workings of things, you certainly had to navigate through different things that you'd never been through before.
But that wasn't that hard for me, to be honest with you. Business is business.
Right.
Got you. On the business side of things, people were so afraid because when I took at that point, WCW was a company that was grossing $25 million a year, and it was losing $10 or $12 million a year in the process. Everybody knew that it was just a matter of time before somebody pulled the plug on that company, and everybody along with it was going to be out of a job. So while the wrestlers didn't really have any respect for me because they weren't close enough to see that the same way, on the business side of things, I didn't have the same problem. They were much more willing to support me because they didn't need to have that kind of respect for me.
And from my perspective personally, back then, I remember at the time, and I can't remember really what was going on. And as you book, I did have a history of nagging injuries, so I can't remember. But I think I was completely healthy at the time. But we were always on the road. We were on doing a pretty heavy road schedule. But I was still relatively new to the business myself. I think I'd probably been in the business 3, at the most 4 years. So I was really still just kind of nose to the grindstone, approaching the task at hand. The mechanics of the business, and not, the Stunning Steve was never a great character or gimmick, but I was still learning the trade, the craft, and all that. And I remember when you got the nod, I didn't think, oh, I can't believe this guy got the job. I was like really ambivalent because I didn't really, and there was no disrespect on my part. I was thinking, who is this guy? He hadn't done. I grew up. I was a fan of yours when you was as a fan of the business. A fan of yours, what you were doing at AWA, and seeing you come through, and hey, we hit it off on a casual level. But from my end, I was just like, okay, there's a new cat in charge. And anyway, so our soap opera would happen the way it would happen another couple of years. So here you are, and there we go, and it's business at hand. And so, what was your first steps that you did to get the ball rolling the way you saw fit?
Back then, I knew what the mission was, Steve. The mission was made really clear to me right from the get-go, which is if this company doesn't fucking make some money quick, this company is going to be gone. There's no more bullshit here.
Right.
It's got to make some money. So I was late. You tell me what the mission is. If I have to go outside and eat the tree outside your window, and there's a reason I have to do that, then I'm going to eat the tree. I'll find a way. So I was very aggressive about that. And people either lined up along with me or they didn't, and it was pretty easy for me to figure out. The biggest challenge then that I had, it wasn't even the wrestlers and some of the more established guys, not guys like yourself, but guys that have been around at that time a long time.
Perspective than
they had, yes, yeah. They did. That was what it was, and I dealt with it how best I could, and I could put people in between me and them at that time because I had the Dusty Rhodes and I had different people that I put in that spot to keep me from it and protect me from it to a degree. But on the business side, I literally made people, and this is the funny part about this shit, bro, is the rap, the narrative, as they say now, on me was like, oh, you just spent Ted Turner's money. That's bullshit. There was no money to spend when I took over.
Right.
What I did, knowing that, and there was one instance when I made everybody out of a meeting, I made everybody go into their offices and count how many pencils, how many pens, how many magic markers they had. Because if you don't know what your asset, my thinking was, if you don't know what your assets are, then how are you going to build on them? If you don't even know what you have, how can you make it bigger? And we were just cutting costs. And this is what ultimately led to me getting control of the company. I pushed the issue about cutting costs and managing the budget because of the live event side of our business at that time. They were doing 120 or 160 or 180 live events a year, and every one of them was losing money. So the method behind that madness was, well, let's go out and do more live events because every time we go out the door, we lose money. And I said, well, what are you going to multiply that times 1,000? Right. You're just going to lose more money. Right. Shut down live events. Quit doing live events. But all of your resources, whatever they are, however many pencils and pens and notepads you have, put them into the television product and create the demand. Then take it out on the road. Don't keep losing money going out on the road. Well, that put me in direct conflict with a ton of people, including Bob Dew, who was then the executive vice president, and he happened to be the guy that was running the Omni at the time. And we fought, and I won.
Right.
And we quit doing live events. And we shut down. We made it as small as we could, control the expenses, and slowly start to build it.
Hey, what was the first year we ended up going down to Orlando for those TV tapings?
That would have been about 94.
Okay. And that was your idea?
Yep. And that was part of the reason.
Right.
Because we couldn't keep taking the show out on the road. Every time we'd and you remember this, you were there. We'd go out to these, we'd go to the Gainesville Arena, whatever the name of the Gainesville venue was. And 68 people would show up, and you have to turn off all the lights. We could have had a match in your living room that would look better than that. We go to center stage, and 3/4 of the people that showed up were going to have little brown paper bags and were falling asleep 20 minutes into the show.
Yeah.
We couldn't do that anymore.
Right.
And part of the making it mainstream was let's go down to Disney. Let's co-brand ourselves with Disney MGM Studios because people know what that is. They may not know us, but they know what that is. and let's leverage that.
So you're thinking that rub with Disney would help.
Exactly.
So in the book, Controversy Creates Cash, it's a hell of a book. I have a hard time reading. I read the thing from cover to cover in about 2-3 weeks. I'm proud of myself.
Lots of pictures.
Swig of beer. Buffalo Bill Cody for the working man. Eric Bischoff beer. It's a damn good beer. Were the Disney people that afraid of the wrestlers? You said
Scared
they
to
didn't want
death.
us on the park, just keep under wraps. I mean,
Scared to death.
Yeah, they just think everybody's going to go crazy and just
Scared to death. They didn't know what to
scare the people
expect.
off.
There was one guy there who was an advocate. His name was Bob Allen, young guy, and he believed. For whatever reason, he believed. I'll never forget. I went into this pitch where I had to pitch Disney, bringing WCW there, and I was in a room by myself. I think David Crockett might have been with me. And we were in a room. It was a square room. It was like this room. It was a square rectangle, and there were seats all the way around the room, and I was in the middle. And when you're pitching a room, you like to make eye contact with the people you're talking to, right? And I felt like an idiot on a pivot. I'm looking around, and everybody's sitting there with their arms crossed. They're kind of looking at me underneath their eyebrows. I'm thinking, oh my God, this is going just horse shit. But Bob Allen pushed it through. But the conditions were, when we came on a lot, we had to come in a bus. People could come in cars. We had to tape over the windows of the bus because nobody wanted to see wrestlers on the property. Yeah. Once the wrestlers got to the building, they had to stay in the building. They couldn't walk around the park.
Right.
That was the rules. By the second or third year we were there, they were now letting us go into the different theme park areas and actually film because they realized that people love wrestlers. They love characters.
They end up being part of the attraction.
And nothing bad happened.
God, man, we had a blast there. I was at the time, I think my travel partner was Steve Regal. We stayed at some little shit box outside Kissimmee and found a British pub, Rover's Return Pub, and God dang, we had some good times there. It was a lot of fun filming TV at Orlando, but it was a little bit of a pain in the ass as far as you guys trying to keep a little kayfabe on.
It was impossible.
On the happenings, as it were, with the belts and stuff like that. And when you took over, Ole was booking. Was Ole booking or on his way out? And then because on the first...
Ole was there. He was there, and I adopted Ole.
Okay, you adopted him, but he had to go down the road, and then your next guy. But that first trip to Disney was Dusty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Dusty believed.
Right.
Dusty believed. I think Ole might have been there for the first one. Ole was there for the first one. Ole made the big mistake one day. You remember Blackjack Molly, right?
Tell me this story because you got a better account of that than I did.
Well, it's vague. I wasn't there. Okay. I'm repeating what I was told. Okay. But Blackjack was a very loyal guy, and I helped Blackjack. I helped him out in time when he needed help.
Right.
I didn't know I adopted him as a guardian angel at that time. I just did it because I thought it was the right thing to do. And Ole made the mistake one day of going down to the power plant, and he started running his mouth. What an idiot I was. And Blackjack just went up to him, and Blackjack had a hand the size of a small refrigerator, knocked Ole completely out, like cold as potatoes.
Cold.
Just knocked him out cold. And that was pretty much the end of Ole.
See, I had heard about the scuffle, but I never knew the reason behind the scuffle. So in reading your book, I was like, that's what it was about. Mm-hmm. It was about Blackjack taking you back because the guy was running you down.
It was just bad mouth. He just did it in front of the wrong guy.
It was so fun because I was such a fan of Ole and Arn in the ring, the Andersons. One of the greatest tag teams of all time. And I love sitting there talking to Ole. And Ole, he's totally politically incorrect, but he's a barrel of monkeys to talk to. He knows the business like the back of his hand. But did he get trapped in maybe a little too old school for the situation?
He knew parts of the business.
Okay.
He knew parts of the business like the back of his hand. Right. He didn't know the television side of the business. He didn't understand the advertising side of the business.
He's just talking about straight up booking on a ledger business. Okay. And not the big picture. You were seeing it in your head.
Yep.
And so then Dusty comes and we go down there. So what was it about Dusty's booking that you liked? Because from Dusty, you went to Flair with the book.
Yeah. Dusty had vision and Dusty had passion. And I loved, what he saw. He wasn't the greatest on executing sometime and follow-up, but he had the vision. I don't want to sound like I'm picking on him because it was common at that time. But it was sometimes the vision was so big that if you didn't think about the details and the execution of the big vision fell flat on its ass. Okay. And that happened a lot.
Yeah.
I tried with Dusty, but it just didn't work out. And I brought Flair in almost for more political reasons, quite honestly, than creative reasons. I needed somebody that talent would have faith in. you can judge that or not, but to me at that time, Rick was the in-ring guy that at that point a lot of people trusted.
So let's talk about the Monday Night Wars.
Cool.
Y'all go down there, and you have a meeting with Ted Turner, and he says, hey, man, really the only way to compete, and you say, is to
go live.
Go live.
Monday night, prime time. Go head to head.
And you didn't think you had a chance in hell getting that?
No, because I didn't. That's not what I was there for. I was there to try to get Ted's permission to do a deal with Rupert Murdoch for Chinese television that no one in this country was ever going to see or even know about. But Rupert Murdoch and Ted Turner had
Dude, you think of China way back in the day. That's smart.
Yeah. they offered money.
Yeah.
But but Murdoch and Turner hated each other at the time, and I couldn't go do that deal without getting permission, or I'd be out of a gig.
Right.
So I talked to Scott Sassa, who was the heir apparent at the time. I said, please help me do this deal, because I knew it would be the one deal that would turn WCW into a profit center for the first time in her history. And once I got past that point, I knew I'd be gold. So set up, did all my research, had my pitch down, and I had met Ted once or twice at like a cocktail party and crap like that. But I knew he could have stepped on me in the lobby and not known who I was. Got all geared up. Harvey Schuler was there. Scott Sassa was there. I get about a minute and a half or 2 minutes into my pitch, shuts me down. Says, Eric, what do we got to do to catch Vince McMahon? It's like, fuck. I felt like I was in a ring with, Mike Tyson and Oscar De La Hoya all at the same time, out of the blue.
Out of the blue. You're talking about China, and he hits you with what's going to take to compete with McMahon.
I did a little bit of boxing in my life. I knew if I don't tuck my fucking chin and cover right now, I'm going down. So I went tuck my chin and just started babbling. And I came up with just go head to head with Vince McMahon, because it was the only logical answer, only defensible answer.
Did he flinch? What happened?
No. He said, Scott. Which, by the way, Scott Sassa was like this young, up-and-coming, hip, cool superstar, take over for Ted Turner soon kind of guy that didn't want anything to do with wrestling. He looked over at Scott and said, Scott, give Eric 2 hours every week, prime time on TNT, Monday night. And TNT at the time was like the quid ornament of the Turner organization. Scott I could see him. He just was like, he got rigor mortis sitting there in a chair. But that was it. It's like once Ted said it, there was no arguing about it. Just do it. And I walked out of that meeting, and I literally stood in the hallway, and I went, now what the fuck am I going to do? Because I asked for it.
Right.
And I got it. Right. Now what do I do with it?
Okay, once again, in uncharted waters. How do you navigate those waters?
I knew the people around me weren't into it. I knew I either had people that were hoping I would fail or people that were afraid I was going to fail. I didn't really have anybody that I could go to. So I literally went into a room by myself a couple hours later, and I made a list. I said, okay, I can't be better than the WWF. There's no freaking way.
And you say that why?
It's just my instinct. And I don't know where I got this or how it came to be a part of my consciousness, but I've known all my life that you either need to be better than or different than.
Right.
You got to be one or the other.
And maybe to your point, and maybe you tell me if I'm resonating in the right thing here. It's going to be hard to be better than him out of Jump Street because
he was too big.
Yeah, he's too big, but he's been doing it a while.
He's 35 years in the market between him and his dad. And there was history in the Northeast.
So I can dig that answer. Go ahead.
And there was no way this young, kind of upstart, relatively new company that was kind of regional was going to be better than this national franchise.
Yeah, gotcha.
But I knew I could be different than them.
Right.
So I literally sat in a room and made a list of every single way I could think of, and some of them were good, some of them not so much, where I could be different than him. It was just not being better, it was being different.
So there you were, Monday Nitro, 2 hours. Went to 3?
I think we started at 3, then we went to 2, but...
Okay, then you get Thunder dropped on you.
We get Thunder dropped on us.
Bunch of live-ass television. But then, so what happened during the Attitude Era, we really started cranking up the volume. And I started kind of really coming into character. DX got hot, and everybody kind of came on the heels. But I guess we pretty much took the restrictors off, and we were able to go seemingly creatively in a much more aggressive direction than y'all were able to go. Was that the icing in the cake on the downslide?
I'll give you my perspective.
Go ahead.
And this was, I don't think I've ever shared this anywhere. Maybe I have. I'm not sure if I covered the book or not. But we were talking about taking flying lessons earlier, and I remember it in January or whatever it was, maybe whatever it was. I was down in Orlando, Florida, finishing up my pilot training. And a guy who's now passed away by the name of Zane Bresloff. And I don't know if you knew Zane or not.
Barely.
But Zane had worked for WWE a long, long time ago, and he came to work for WCW. He was a promoter. He was a local promoter in Denver. But he became a very good friend of mine. And he still knew a lot of people who were at very high levels in WWE. And we're on a roll, and everybody's doing great. And I remember Zane called me one afternoon when I was in Kissimmee taking flying lessons. He goes, Eric, you're not going to believe what they're doing. And in my mind, these things all kind of happen close together. He said, they're going to spend a boatload of money doing a Super Bowl ad. Really? I thought they were almost out of business. Last I heard, they were pulling the water coolers out of the building because they can't afford to put the water in them. Now they're doing a Super Bowl commercial? I said, wow, that's crazy. And you were getting hot, really hot right about then. And then he called me back. I want to say the same day, but it might have been a couple of days. He goes, oh, you're not going to believe this. They're doing a deal with Mike Tyson. What? Mike Tyson was gold at that time. So I think it was a combination. I don't know what was going on there at the time. You obviously you were closer to it than I was, clearly. But it's like anything else. It's no one thing. It's a combination of a series of things. But I think between whatever the mental process was or creative process of going, okay, take the blinders or take the restraints off, go compete. Let's bring in Mike Tyson. Stone Cold Steve Austin's becoming a great character. Vince is going to turn heel. There's just all these major shifts that were happening, just boom, 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 one right after another. I knew at the end of that phone call, when I heard what you guys are doing, based on and then watching you get hot, I knew right then we were toast.
What did y'all do? I mean,
we didn't do anything, and I couldn't do anything, and that was the frustration for me. And that's where my head started to snap, because at the same time you guys were doing that, I had a bunch of executives from Time Warner who had never watched 7 seconds of wrestling telling me what wrestling was going to be like on the network. So not only could I not compete with WWE at the time, or you guys, I couldn't keep my own boat from sinking because there was 25 people telling me how to row it that didn't have any idea about the business. So we were fighting against you guys, which I don't think we could have won anyway. And at the same time, we were fighting against ourselves. They were cutting our budgets in half. It was like, oh, do another primetime show. And I know we gave you, $10 million in your budget to do it last year, but we're going to take that away from you. But do it anyway.
Right.
I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. So it was a bad time.
In the book, Controversy Creates Cash, you left the business, or they let you go, but then brought you back.
Yeah, that's about a year after, between you getting hot and WWE taking over and really coming back strong, things started really hitting the wall with Turner. And I was picking fights. I had plenty of time left on my contract. I wasn't worried about that. And I was so pissed off and here's where I made a couple mistakes in retrospect. One is I didn't know that Ted Turner no longer had control of his own company.
Right.
I didn't know that. I'm not sure Ted knew it at the time, quite honestly. I assumed Ted had my back. So I was picking fights with executives because I had done it in the past.
Right.
And I'd always come out on top because I delivered. I won. I was picking fights with people that were so high above me, assuming that I had somebody that had my back, not knowing I didn't. He was gone. Ted was gone. They knew it. I didn't. And I was making so many enemies at a very high level that finally one day Harvey Schiller called me. I'll never forget. I was driving home from work one night, and Harvey called me and said, Eric, you need to be in my office at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. I said, why? So I never met Harvey.
Right.
He never called me to his office. He said, just be here. I knew. Yeah, I knew. And I went into his office, and he said, you need to go home. So what do you mean I need to go home? I got a pay-per-view. Said, no, you don't. You need to go home. He said, Eric, just take my word for it. Go home. It'll be okay. I said, cool. I went home. I knew, but I went home. They played me, meaning they had to, as long as they paid me, I couldn't go anywhere, but I had a lot of time left on my deal, and I was making decent money. So I went home, told my wife what happened. I said, honey, I'm jumping in the plane. I'm going to Wyoming, and I'm going to go fishing. See you in a week or two. I did. I just jumped in my plane and flew to Wyoming.
How long were you gone before they brought you back?
About 3 months, 4 months. And I was flying back. It was after the Super Bowl. And I had actually I went up, I was flying like an idiot at the time. Flew up to Minnesota, got my brother and sister, flew them out to Wyoming, watched Super Bowl together, dropped them off in Minneapolis. And my wife and I stayed in Minneapolis one night, and I was watching Monday Night Raw. And I think that's when y'all brought Malenko and Benoit and everybody in.
Yeah.
I watched that from like a Chili's restaurant. And I couldn't hear it because it was up on a monitor far away, but I could see it. And I was watching that. I said, I bet you Turner will call me back. WCW will call me within the next week. 2 days later, I got a phone call. Oh, what do you think about coming back? And so I went back. Different deal. I made him pay me out. This is probably all supposed to be confidential, but I don't care anymore at this point. I made him pay me out 100 cents on a dollar on my deal. Made him write me a new deal and give me a 3-movie script or a 3-movie deal.
Right.
Put. You know what that means. A put commitment. Yeah. Now, hey, you pitch us one, we may or may not do it. This was a put commitment. You get 3 movies. TV movies. I went, well, that doesn't suck.
That's a good piece of leverage that you used.
Yeah, because I didn't have to go back.
Yeah.
I didn't need the money. Didn't have to go back.
Right. But they needed somebody who knew.
Well, they figured out after I was gone, and I'm not going to mention any names, but they brought somebody in who supposedly, created the Attitude Era that everybody figured out was blowing smoke. It was like, okay, well, this isn't going to work. We got to get this thing back. So, yeah, I had leverage.
So then finally, the end of the deal, end of the road, it's all over.
Yeah, we tried, and the working relationship wasn't going to work. That was obvious. And I actually came, I called them. I had a good relationship with Brad Siegel at the time, who was the head of TNT. And I called Brad when I could see the handwriting on the wall. Even, they brought me back. I was trying to make it work. It wasn't going to work. There was a bunch of other issues. And I said, guys, this is never going to work here. This is a square peg in a round hole. You need to sell this. Let me find a buyer, because I already had one. Let me find somebody that's going to make this go away relatively painlessly for you with an upside. And he laughed at me, called me back 2 days later. Said, yeah. You really got that guy? I said, yes, we do. And they ultimately, they went on to become, it's Fusion Media, Brian Badal, Steve Greenberg. These guys went on to become really, really massive sports media players, made millions and millions and millions of dollars. They were smart guys that wanted to buy it. Turner jacked them around, and finally somebody came in and said, nah, we don't want to do that, because we had negotiated a deal. We negotiated a deal for, I think it was close to $60 million with an upside, but it included television on the networks. And then they brought in another owner, Jamie Kellner, or another operator. Jamie Kellner came in, and he just didn't want wrestling on the network. Killed the deal. And, a week later, Vince was buying it for pennies on a dollar.
So if you'd have came in with the new owners, what would you have done differently then to compete?
The idea was, we would have still competed, but it was clear that we had to rebrand.
Right.
It was clear that we had to clean up a lot of stuff. It was clear that we had to make it smaller again before we could make it bigger, kind of going back to the same type of formula that I started with, which is get your house in order, get your TV strong, then everything else will follow. That was the plan. It was, in fact, we were going to pull it off the air and then relaunch it, because I knew we couldn't just slap a new logo on it, create a new name the following week. It had to go away for a little while. We had to use the absence makes the heart grow fonder factor, and make people want to see it come back, a couple months later. But that was the original plan.
Man, right there towards the end, what was the morale in the locker room? Because where we were at, we got the word on the street that it was pretty much a clusterfuck backstage. It was highly chaotic and unorganized.
I can't really say much to it, because in my role at the time when they brought me back, I was a consultant. So I was just kind of feeding information, kind of controlling things from a distance, but I wasn't hands-on, boots on the ground like I had been.
Right.
It was bad. It was
So where was your head at then? I mean, dude, they paid you out 100%, got you a new deal. You got 3 movies. You're a consultant.
Got the cash in my Time Warner stock at $97 a share, but yeah.
So you got that going for you, which is nice. So your head's, still being a competitive guy.
I was comfortable.
You want to do as much as you can.
Oh, yeah, but I wanted to do it again.
Mindset.
I wanted to do it again.
Right.
Maybe even more so, because I proved to myself I could do it once again, so now I had the confidence.
But the fact that you got paid and got some dough, it
didn't mitigate anything. Didn't soften me up a bit.
Make sure to stick around after this podcast to get the latest headlines from the AP News Minute.
The biggest Sunday of the year is finally here as the Los Angeles Rams go head-to-head with the New England Patriots in Atlanta. And PodcastOne Sportsnet has got your game day coverage. Tune into The Rich Eisen Show and The Dan Patrick Show for your daily game day analysis from the most iconic sportscasters around. as RJ Bell of RJ Bell's Dream Preview and Shaq from the Big Podcast come at you live on the ground for the best game day coverage available. No matter which team you're rooting for, download these shows and more each week on Podcast One Sportsnet or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
Steve Austin, Unleash.
How long have you had the nickname Eazy-E?
Scott Hall gave that to
I
me
knew
somewhere
Scott Hall
along the way.
gave you that. I was going to say, one of two people gave you that name. Scott Hall was going to be my first. Kevin Nash going to be my second.
No, it was Scott Hall.
Scott Hall.
Yeah, it was Scott Hall.
God dang, how smart is that guy?
He's amazing. He is amazing. And I've said this before, and I'll say, and I owe it to him. We owe it to him. He needs to hear this again. When his head was right, he had more instinct and better vision and a better feel for this business than anybody I've ever met, bar none.
Dude, it's funny. Through DDP, Diamond Dallas Page, our mutual good buddy, I started calling Scott Hall every here and there, and I'll just ring him out of the blue. And I've probably only had maybe 4 conversations with him on the phone. It's not like we're phone buddies. But we'll just start talking about the business for 10, 15, 20. And you'll hear some stuff come out of that guy's mouth. It's like, holy shit. And I've been around the horn a few times. I've been pretty damn high and started pretty damn low. And you hear his spin on things. It reminded me a lot of riding down the road with Ravishing Rick Rude, because he loved to talk about the business. He kind of had the same mind, but Scott even deeper so than even Rick. And so I agree with you. Just the way he talks about things. And sometimes he'll talk about a match and he'll go into specifics. He'll start talking about percentages and he'll start talking about finishes. But a great mind for the goddamn
amazing
business.
And when NWO was really first getting going, and it was a collaboration, believe me. It was
whose idea was it to start the NWO?
It was mine.
Okay.
It was mine. But it was my idea originally, but that idea morphed. So the idea that I had was different than what we all saw on television because Scott got involved, because Kevin got involved.
Right.
You know what I mean? So nobody can claim ownership to it. I've read so many people have, taking credit for that. It's ridiculous. But I'm here to tell you that there were meetings that we had in 96 and 97 and Scott was clear-headed when he came in, and he would sit and we would start laying out stuff, and the shit that he came up with sometimes just it almost took my breath away. He came up with the Sting Crow character. That was all Scott Hall. That wasn't Sting. That wasn't me. That was Scott Hall. He created that. I was in the room when he created that character,
right,
word for word. And Sting went out and did it, and it was magic. It was magic.
What'd Sting think?
Sting was open at the time because that was post the NWO. He ended up not being the third guy, which he was going to be if Hogan wasn't going to do the deal. And he was looking for that one thing. He knew NWO was hot, but he knew NWO needed, a protagonist.
Right.
And he was going to be that guy.
Yeah.
And he loved Scott's vision of that character.
Was the feeling then when you guys got momentum and started kicking our ass, what was it, for 84 some straight weeks? Mm-hmm. But then when you guys were beating us in the Monday Night Wars on the Nielsen ratings, was it the perception, or was it in y'all's mind that y'all had now become the number one promotion? Because from the boys' level, from my level, and of course I was WWF, the WWF was always the place to be. At that time, did y'all consider WCW the place to be?
I didn't. I never got really comfortable. And I'm going to tell you a story. There was a moment in time, and it was when we were at our peak or close to it, and we were in Detroit. We're at the Cobo Arena, I think. And I was in a limo with Hulk, and we had a big event going on. I remember which one it was. And he looked at me, and he's a really wise guy.
Very.
He looked at me, and he saw me getting a little full of myself. Mm. And he'd been up and down a couple times.
Yeah, yeah.
And he saw me getting a little full of myself, and he said, "Brother, don't ever think that you're where you want to be, because enjoy this moment, because it can disappear before you know it." And I remember when he said that to me, I was thinking, why would you say that? Where did that come from?
Right.
Here we are doing what we're doing. Why would you say that? And, it ended up becoming true. But I never really thought of us as being the place to be. I never thought we won. I was always aspiring to win, always wanted to be bigger. It was not a job that was completed. It was just a process.
So with dealing with Hulk Hogan, creative control over his storylines, How tough was the dynamics of just trying to work within those parameters?
It really wasn't. It's so much of that has been so overplayed. I've listened to the stories being told by so many different people that don't have a fucking clue what they're talking about. There was a couple occasions where it became an issue, but no different than it would have been with you when you were with Vince McMahon and you didn't have creative control, but you did.
Well, yeah.
There are...
You talk about that in your book. But I'll tell you what, I've always been a pretty, I've always wanted to do the right thing for business, but I'll tell you what, there's a lot of times... And Triple H got the heat for running me down in one of the interviews he did. He said, man, sometimes Stone Cold Steve Austin would roll into a building for Monday Night Raw, and they'd drop creative on him, and he'd just tell him, no, fuck you, well, I'm not doing that. And, and he wouldn't offer a solution. And people thought that he was running me down. No, he was telling a true story. If I didn't like something at the time, I'd say, no, I'm not doing that shit. And, well, what do you want to do? I don't know, but I ain't doing that. So... yeah, I was in the same place. It wasn't written in my contract.
No, it's not. It's not creative control legally, but it's as a character. When you're that successful, when you're that important, and when you're protecting your own character, which is what you were doing, and you had to, just like Hogan did. Here was Hogan's biggest thing: is you'd lay some shit on him. Guys would lay out stories, they'd lay out finishes, they'd lay out a program, whatever, and he'd listen. And he'd start doing this. He'd start stroking that Fu Manchu. And the minute you saw him reaching that Fu Manchu, you knew the question was coming. And the question was always the same. Cool. Where do you go from there?
Right.
And if you didn't have that answer right there, right then, and it was clear and you've already thought about it, and he knew you were bullshitting, he wasn't doing it. Smart. Because he knew that you didn't have a fucking clue what you were doing. You were just throwing a dart in the dark and hoping it was going to hit a target.
Well, yeah, you're playing checkers when you got to be playing chess. So he's looking for that next move. In Monday Nitro, when did y'all switch to Kevin Nash having a book?
That was towards the end when, quite honestly, I was fried. There were things going on the business side, internally at Turner, Time Warner, AOL, that my brain was in a freaking blender.
You're talking about when things kind of started going awry. It was the merger with Time Warner, AOL.
Well, there were two. There was the Time Warner merger, which was a real challenge, and then when it became AOL Time Warner, it just got ass ugly.
Okay, so what changed for you when that merger happened?
Again,
that's when the headaches began.
Oh yeah, but Time Warner is when it really began. I'll never forget this. I went to a Christmas party one time at Terry McGurk's house. Terry McGurk at the time was the CEO of Turner Broadcasting. And it was just a handful of executives and their families that got invited to this Christmas party. And I went to Terry McGurk's house, and everybody that anybody was there. And Gerald Levin, who was at the time the CEO of Time Warner, came in. And everybody toasted, and it was a big deal. And Gerald Levin said, one of the greatest things about this merger is that we're going to take the stability and the magnitude of this Time Warner infrastructure, and we're going to infuse it with the entrepreneurial drive of the Turner organization. And together we're going to become unbeatable. And I believe that. Like, you got to prove to me that I can't believe you before I won't believe you.
Right.
I don't immediately distrust people. I immediately trust them. And when he said that, I went, God damn, this is going to be even better than it's been. And mind you, it was pretty good for me. I had Ted Turner's confidence, and I was so excited. And somebody else about a week later said, be careful, because here's how these corporate mergers work. It doesn't happen overnight, but slowly but surely, the company that buys the other company, own it. They control it. Everything changes. And within months, I started seeing guys that were pretty loose, pretty cool, pretty creative, pretty entrepreneurial, people at my level and way above my level. All of a sudden, they're wearing blue suits, white shirts, red ties, wingtip shoes, walking and talking like their Time Warner counterparts. Well, this is ugly. And then the reality hit. They changed everything about the way we did business. And that was the beginning of the end. And that's about the time when I brought Kevin in, because my head was just, I was crushed.
So how did he do for you?
Kevin's a friend. He wasn't really cut out to be a booker. He didn't, had a creative. He didn't have the support. People looked at him as being, taking care of himself. And it was a bad situation for him. His intentions were there.
Right.
And his capabilities there. Kevin's a bright, talented guy. And he could probably do it right now.
Right.
But back then, coming off of everything that we'd come through on the NWO and all the crap that went along with it, it was horrible timing for him.
What was your favorite angle in the history of the business that you've watched? Just something that you thought was the greatest shit ever.
It's going to sound condescending. Clearly, I love
NWO because
clearly I would have to because I would, but I loved watching the stuff with you and McMahon and Tyson because I believed it. There were moments in that angle that I wasn't sure. As close as I am to the business, part of it, in my mind at least, I'm not even asking you to comment on it, but in my mind watching it, I believed 20% of it was real, 40% of it was real, but there was parts of it that were real, and it allowed me to drop my hands and enjoy it and get sucked into it. And those were the two biggest moments in the business. And it, it's what when I'm in the business and I'm active in it, that's what I strive for. Give me something, and I don't care if it's at that. I mean, it's hard to get that level. It's impossible almost anymore. But it doesn't matter. Just give me something that I can believe. Just give me something I believe, whatever it is.
Can that still be done?
I don't think it can be done at the level that you guys did it or even that I did it with NWO because the world has changed so much and it's so hard to get that much attention at that moment to create a seismic shift. But I believe you can create stories and characters that are believable to this day, whether you do it on a YouTube or on your iPhone, whatever it is. But you can't just cheat your way through it. You have to put in the time and make it real.
I still believe that if you present something in a very serious fashion, total shoot, we know it's a damn work, but listen, on all levels, it's let's think shoot but work. With our bodies, with our work, with our promos. I think it'd still be done, but it's just in all how it's presented.
But what you act. I mean, you work with other actors. You do movies. When you watch a television show or a good movie, whether it's an independent film or whether it's a big budget blockbuster, the ones that move you are the ones where the actors believe it themselves, or at least you believe right. They do. They move you. I watched a movie the other night with my wife called Heaven is Real. I'm not an overly religious person, right. But there were moments in that movie that were so real with actors no one's ever seen before, will probably never see again, but that were so well done. It was written well and it was executed well that it just sucked you in. I live for those moments in wrestling.
I think it can be done. To me, it's all how it's presented and just in a serious tone. Jeff Jarrett recently announced that he was coming out with Global Force Wrestling. Mm-hmm. I think I said that correctly. Man, have you heard any news about this?
Only what we've all read, on the internet, and I wish him well.
Is the money behind that Toby Keith?
I have no idea.
They hadn't said that, but obviously that's one of the rumors. What do you think about that? Do you think they have a chance? I mean, they're not going to compete with WWF, and they're not trying to. They're just going to try to, make some money. To me, it's going to be interesting to watch, and it's always great when some of the guys and gals can have jobs. But I always want to see, and Jeff's been around the horn a few times. So now, seeing how this time around, how he's going to present this product.
I'm interested as well. And believe me, I've had a couple people come to me as recently as this afternoon that have talked to me about, hey, I've got some guys who really like to get in this business. But, you look at today's television environment. You've got Comcast, NBC Universal, and everything that's underneath that umbrella. You've got Viacom and everything that's underneath that umbrella. You've got Fox and everything that's underneath that umbrella. Doesn't leave a whole lot else. So the idea of being able to launch a television show in today's environment is really a challenge. Much more so than it was 5 years ago.
Right.
Way more than it was 10 years ago. And it's not even the same world as it was 20 years ago. So I don't know.
Hey, let's wrap this whole shenanigan up. But tell me a funny story before we wrap it up. One of the funniest things I've ever seen in my whole history of watching pro wrestling, Eric, is when they was going to debut the Shockmaster. God bless him, that son of a gun. When that explosion happened and he come catapulting through the wall, he fell down, his helmet fell off. I felt so bad for him now, Fred. But when I watch it back and you listen to Sid, and you can hear Davey Boy talking underneath all the audio. It's a total clusterfuck. That's the funniest damn thing I've ever seen in the history of the business. What is one of the funny stories that you would share with me and my listeners before we ride off in the sunset?
There's two of them.
Okay, I got time. I got plenty of time.
I'll make the first one as quick as I can.
No, we got all day long.
And I may have covered this in a book, and I don't want to be repetitive, but I was brand new on the job in AWA. They literally had to build me a little temporary office in the studio portion of their building, right? And it's just 2x4s and sheetrock. It's just a little partition gimmick, right? About 3 times bigger than this table. And I had this big deer head. It was a beautiful whitetail that I shot in Montana up on the wall. Big, beautiful 8-point. Beautiful. He's up on the wall. That's my office, right? I've been on the job for a week. I built the office myself, and I'm no construction guy. Believe me, I painted it myself. And it was a TV day, and this was before I got into doing the interviews. So it was a TV day, meaning Vern had flown in all these people from around the country to do market-specific promos, right? You remember what those are, syndication. Yep. And they're doing them, and I'm in my office because I was not supposed to hear or see any of this stuff. I could hear everything, but I couldn't see it. So I'm in my office trying to do my gig, right? And I hear Kevin Kelly. Remember Kevin Kelly? Legit badass. Yeah. Probably still is. And Sheik Adnan LKC get into an argument. I think it was over a parking space. And I've been in enough bar fights and been around shit enough to know when it sounds like it's going to get real. And I'm going, oh my God, they're going to really fight. This is not, they're not shooting an interview. I wasn't thinking that, but that's what I'm thinking now. Right. I'm going, oh my God, this is getting bad. Next thing I know, Sheik's head came through my sheetrock right underneath my deer head. Kevin Kelly grabbed him and ran his head through the wall. Fortunately, he missed the 2x4 studs. He ran right in between them, literally underneath my deer head. So I'm looking at about a third of the top of Sheik Adnan LKC's head. And that was like, okay, welcome to the wrestling business. So that was kind of funny. And then the other one, a little more personal, but Randy Savage. Did you know Randy very well?
No, I didn't know him too well, man. Going back to the Orlando TV tapings, I did a job for him one time. I think Flair had the book, and I did the favors for him. And it was nothing but a 4-minute match maybe. And that was it. I never really knew Randy. Ton of respect for him. But he was, just from watching, his interviews, just interviews, not just Macho Man interviews, Randy Savage interviews. That was kind of him.
He was intense.
That's what I'm saying. He's intense. So to your point, to answer your question, didn't really know him from Adam.
And I think one of the reasons he was intense is because he was really a generous, kind, trusting person. But he also knew that he was a generous, kind, and trusting person. Right. So he, to protect himself from himself, he'd do this Randy Savage thing that everybody saw. Right. So I never had a problem with Randy at all. But we had gotten to the MGM Grand, and it was a pay-per-view. And Randy's contract, he was supposed to, I don't remember what he was supposed to do. Somebody else will remember that. But he was probably supposed to do a job. And his contract was like 3 or 4 months away from being up. So I get to, and you know how Las Vegas was when it's rocking. There's just like drinking and partying and public appearances and all. It was hard. It was physically hard. So I got there a couple days in advance, and I was with my wife. And anyway, I get a phone call on a Friday night. Hey, brother, meet me in my room, 8:00 tomorrow morning. You know, this is like 2:00. I'm going, oh fuck. Okay, Randy, I'll be there. So I get to Randy's room, knock on the door. So Randy's right out of the shower, stark ass naked. Okay, shaved from head to toe. And he's dyeing his hair, and he's dyeing his beard, right? Awkward, whatever. I walk in, and I sit down on the bed, and he had called room service. And there must have been $800 worth of food and beer there. There had to be 40 beers in several buckets and shrimp and all kinds of shit. It's 8:00 in the morning, right? And I'm hungover and I'm tired and I'm going, oh my God, I don't want to negotiate. I know what I'm in for. Hey, brother, we need to talk, brother. I'm gearing myself up. I'm popping beers. I'm pounding them. I'm going, I gotta get ready for this, right? All of a sudden, on the door, I'm going, oh fuck, who could that be? Go to the door. I look at the little people, and it's another room service guy. Fuck. Now, the way the room was set up, it was like the bathroom and the area where Randy was as you walk up to the door, it's right on your right. And Randy's right out there and wide open. So I open up the door, and the guy walks in pushing a cart. And he looked at me, and I'm not sure he recognized me. I don't think he did. But he looks at me, and he looks over, and there's Randy going, "Hey, brother." I'm thinking, oh, God. Oh, I can just see it now. You know, I know what he's thinking, right? And it's going to be all over the internet and all over the headlines. And it turned out to be fine, but that was the most awkward, funny moment for me.
How did the negotiation go?
It turned out okay. Randy was hard. Randy was tough. Randy wanted to know that he wasn't getting screwed over, but he wasn't. He was a good guy. He was a good guy.
Who was the most dynamic personality you had to deal with? Not good or bad, just dynamic and just hard to work with.
I don't know how to answer that. You know, maybe I put it all out of my mind. Maybe I don't want to remember it anymore. I never, you know, there just wasn't that many people that I had that much trouble with.
Here's a relationship tip for y'all. It's not going to truly feel like Valentine's unless there's a surprise bouquet of roses involved. And this season, the biggest and brightest roses are only found at 1-800-Flowers.com. So get on it, because when you order early, 1-800-Flowers is going to hook you up with amazing deals on Valentine's, rose bouquets, arrangements, and more. Starting at just $29.99. Roses from 1-800-Flowers are picked at their peak and shipped overnight to ensure freshness. All you got to do is pick a delivery date and let 1-800-Flowers handle the rest. There are so many unbelievable deals from 1-800-Flowers, but you have to hurry because bouquet prices will be going up soon. So take advantage today to order Valentine's bouquets, arrangements, and more. Starting at $29.99, go to 1-800-Flowers.com. Click the radio icon and enter code AUSTIN. Be a damn hero this Valentine's Day. Order and save today at 1-800-Flowers.com. Code AUSTIN. You can also be a hero by saving on your car insurance. Go to Geico.com, and in 15 minutes you can be saving 15% or more on car insurance. That's right. Save hundreds of dollars on car insurance at Geico.com. Extra money in your pocket? It may just be the most rewarding thing you do today. All right, I'm giving Sean a go-home cue, so let's wrap it up for this week. Make sure you check out PodcastOne.com and subscribe to The Steve Austin Show so you don't miss any of these classic episodes. Before I ride off in the sunset, I do want to throw out a couple of plugs. I still got a beer. It's the Badass Broken Skull IPA, the finest IPA in the United States of America, and that's the bottom line. Made by El Segundo Brewing Company. You can find Broken Skull IPA at Whole Foods and Total Wines if you live in Cali. If you ain't in Cali, you're probably SOL. And if you're looking to get a badass pocket knife, I got two for you. Cold Steel Broken Skull Knife, Cold Steel Working Man Knife. Get them at my Amazon store. Amazon.com/shop/Steve Austin, or go to the Cold Steel Knives website and check out all their badass knives. Also, one more big shout out to all my sponsors to make this show possible. That's how I'm able to bring this show to you free twice a week. Please support them because they support us. For more info, check out the podcast description to this episode for details. Folks, I am on social media, Twitter and Instagram, at Steve Austin BSR. Folks, I'll be back soon, but until then, my name is Steve Austin, and I will catch your ass down the road.
Download new episodes of Steve Austin Unleashed every Thursday at PodcastOne.com. That's PodcastOne.com.